Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, ancient city, its streets laid out in perfect grids, its buildings equipped with advanced drainage systems, yet no one knows who ruled here, what language they spoke, or why this thriving civilization vanished without a trace. This isn't the plot of a lost civilization novel. It's the real-life enigma of the Indus Valley, one of humanity's oldest and most mysterious urban cultures. Flourishing over 4,000 years ago along the banks of the Indus River, this civilization rivals the greatness of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, yet its secrets remain locked away, teasing historians and archaeologists with questions that defy easy answers. What made their cities so astonishingly advanced? Why did a society capable of such engineering marvels leave behind no grand temples or palaces? And perhaps most haunting of all, what caused their sudden disappearance, leaving behind only silent ruins and a script that no one has ever deciphered? The Indus Valley Civilization is a puzzle wrapped in a mystery, a chapter of human history filled with contradictions that challenge everything we think we know about ancient societies. They built cities with precision that would impress modern urban planners, complete with standardized brick sizes and intricate water management systems. Yet, unlike their contemporaries, they left no obvious monuments to kings or gods, no clear evidence of warfare or conquest. Their writing system, etched into seals and tablets, stares back at us like a code waiting to be cracked, defying decades of linguistic detective work. And then there's the abrupt end, a civilization at its peak, seemingly thriving, only to fade into oblivion, leaving behind empty streets and unanswered questions. Today, we're diving deep into 30 of the most bewildering mysteries of the Indus Valley, the riddles that keep scientists awake at night. From the eerie absence of royal tombs to the hauntingly modern design of their cities, each clue we uncover only deepens the intrigue. Why did they prioritize equality and hygiene in ways unmatched by their peers? What catastrophic event or slow unraveling led to their downfall? As we peel back the layers of time, we'll explore the theories, the debates, and the tantalizing hints that might one day unlock the truth. This isn't just a journey into the past, it's a detective story that spans millennia, and you're about to become part of it. So let's step into the shadows of history and uncover the secrets of the Indus Valley, one enigmatic clue at a time. One of the most tantalizing riddles left behind by the Indus Valley Civilization is their enigmatic script, a collection of over 400 unique symbols etched onto seals, pottery, and tablets, yet utterly silent to modern ears. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform, which were cracked using bilingual inscriptions like the Rosetta Stone, the Indus script stands alone, a linguistic ghost refusing to give up its secrets. The symbols themselves are elegant, some resembling animals, others abstract geometric shapes, but without a single decipherable sentence or even a confirmed word. They remain as mysterious today as when they were first discovered. What makes this puzzle even more frustrating is the sheer volume of material. Thousands of inscriptions have been found, hinting at a writing system sophisticated enough to record complex information. But was it a full language or just a symbolic shorthand? Some researchers argue the script represents an early form of Dravidian, the language family still spoken in southern India today, while others suggest it might be logographic, where each symbol stands for a whole word or concept. Then there's the most unsettling theory of all. What if it's not writing at all, but something else entirely? Could these symbols be religious emblems, clan markers, or even an ancient system of accounting? The absence of lengthy texts adds to the confusion. Most inscriptions are astonishingly brief, just a handful of symbols at a time, often stamped onto clay seals that might have been used in trade. This has led some to speculate the script wasn't meant for literature or royal decrees, but for practical purposes, labeling goods, recording transactions, or marking ownership. But if that's true, why haven't we found longer administrative records like tax lists or inventories? And why does the script appear on ritual objects hinting at a sacred dimension? Compounding the mystery is the fact that no bilingual artifact has ever surfaced, no Indus Valley equivalent of the Rosetta Stone to bridge the gap between their symbols and a known language. Without this key, every attempt at decipherment feels like trying to solve a crossword puzzle with no clues. Some scholars have used statistical methods, analyzing symbol frequency and placement to hunt for patterns, while others have turned to computational models, hoping machines might spot what human eyes have missed. Yet after decades of effort, the script's meaning remains just out of reach, a whispered conversation from 4,000 years ago that we still can't overhear. Rising from the dust of Mohenjo-Daro stands one of the Indus Valley's most iconic structures, the Great Bath, a colossal water tank that defies simple explanation. Built with meticulous precision, this brick-lined pool stretches nearly 40 feet long and is fed by an intricate network of pipes and drains, a marvel of engineering that rivals modern water systems. But what purpose did it serve? Was it a sacred space for ritual purification, a communal hub for social bonding, or simply an early experiment in urban hygiene? The answer remains as fluid as the water that once filled it. The Great Bath's design hints at something far grander than a practical reservoir. Its steps lead down into the tank like an invitation, while the surrounding courtyard suggests a space meant for gathering. Some researchers believe this was the heart of spiritual life, a place where rituals cleansed both body and soul, much like the holy ghats along India's rivers today. Others point to the absence of temples or altars in the city, proposing that water itself was worshipped, making the bath a temple in liquid form. Then there's the mundane yet revolutionary theory. Could it have been an early public utility, a testament to the Indus people's obsession with cleanliness? Their cities were laced with drains and sewers, after all, and the bath's advanced filtration system suggests a society that prioritized hygiene in ways unmatched by their contemporaries. What's undeniable is the sophistication behind its construction. The bath's walls were sealed with a natural tar to prevent leaks, while the nearby well system ensured a steady water supply. The drainage channels, carefully angled, allowed for efficient cleaning features so advanced they wouldn't be seen again for millennia. Yet despite its functionality, the bath scale feels ceremonial. Unlike the private wells in homes, this was a public monument, suggesting a shared experience central to civic life. The mystery deepens when we consider the silence of the archaeological record. No murals depict its use, no inscriptions explain its rituals, and no artifacts left behind clarify whether it hosted solemn rites or lively festivals. Even the water source is debated. Was it filled by manual labor or an early aqueduct system now lost to time? Each layer of inquiry reveals not answers but more questions, leaving us to wonder if the Great Bath's true purpose was as multifaceted as the civilization that built it. Perhaps it was all these things at once, a spiritual sanctuary, a social landmark, and a symbol of the Indus Valley's genius, all flowing together like water in a vessel designed to hold mysteries as much as rain. Among the towering ziggurats of Mesopotamia and the pyramid-studded landscapes of Egypt, one glaring absence defines the Indus Valley. Where are its monumental temples? While contemporary civilizations built towering shrines to gods and kings, the people of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa left no stone colossi, no grand stairways to the heavens. This conspicuous void forces us to ask, did they reject the very concept of divine monuments, or is the truth buried beneath the sands of time? Theories about this absence ripple through archaeological circles like echoes in an empty hall. One compelling idea suggests the Indus Valley civilization operated without the rigid hierarchies of their neighbors. Unlike Egypt's god-kings or Mesopotamia's priest-rulers, Indus cities show startling uniformity, homes of similar size, public wells distributed evenly, and no evidence of royal tombs. Could this indicate a society where power was shared, where no single ruler or priesthood commanded the labor to erect megalithic tributes? Some scholars point to the striking lack of weaponry in excavations, hinting at a culture that prioritized trade over conquest, cooperation over domination. Yet another possibility lingers. What if their sacred spaces weren't meant to last? While stone endures, wood and clay vanish. The Indus people may have built temples from perishable materials, bamboo, thatch, or intricately carved timber, leaving only ghostly imprints in the soil. At Mohenjo-Daro, a series of raised platforms near the Great Bath might mark where wooden structures once stood, their purpose lost to decay. Even their rituals could have been fluid, centered on water, fire, or dance rather than static monuments. Then there's the provocative notion that their entire city was a temple. The gridded streets, the meticulous drainage systems, the standardization of brick sizes, all reflect a reverence for order that might have been spiritual as much as practical. In this view, daily life was the ritual and cleanliness was the offering. The absence of idols could signal a belief system focused on abstract forces or ancestral veneration rather than deity worship. But contradictions abound. A handful of terracotta figurines, possibly goddesses, and seals depicting horned beings in yogic postures suggest some form of iconography. Were these personal devotions or fragments of a larger religious tapestry now disintegrated? The silence is deafening. Without deciphered texts or vivid frescoes, we're left tracing shadows on a cave wall, wondering if the Indus Valley's greatest temple was something we've failed to recognize. A society itself, engineered in reverence to balance, equality, and the invisible bonds of community. Walk through the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro or Harappa, and you'll notice something eerie. It feels like you could take a wrong turn and still know exactly where you are. That's because these cities weren't just planned. They were precision engineered with a uniformity that rivals modern metropolis blueprints. Streets run in flawless 90-degree angles, bricks adhere to strict standardized sizes, and entire neighborhoods mirror each other across settlements separated by hundreds of miles. How did a civilization stretching from present-day Pakistan to India achieve such exacting consistency without maps, satellites, or even a known central government calling the shots? The scale of this coordination is staggering. Archaeologists have uncovered bricks across Indus Valley sites that match to within millimeters of each other, whether in the coastal city of Dholavira or the inland hub of Rakhigarhi. This wasn't accidental. The ratio of their brick dimensions, 4:2:1, was so rigorously enforced that even structures built centuries apart fit the same template. Imagine trying to replicate that level of standardization today without digital blueprints or a unified building code. The streets tell the same story. Main thoroughfares precisely aligned north-south or east-west, with smaller lanes branching off at perfect right angles, creating city blocks that could belong to a single master plan. This raises profound questions about power and organization. Most ancient civilizations relied on strong central authorities, pharaohs, emperors, priest-kings, to orchestrate large-scale projects. Yet the Indus Valley shows no obvious palaces, no grand residences for rulers, no storehouses of wealth that would suggest a coercive elite. Instead, the evidence points to something far more intriguing: consensus. Some scholars propose that this uniformity emerged from shared cultural values rather than top-down decrees, a society where communities voluntarily adhered to common standards because they recognized their collective benefit. Think of it as an ancient form of municipal best practices, passed along trade routes and river networks like a slow-motion game of telephone perfected over generations. The practical advantages were undeniable. Standardized bricks meant any worker could contribute to any construction project without retraining. Gridded streets simplified drainage, those famous Indus sewers, and made neighborhoods easier to navigate for traders carrying goods from distant regions. Even the orientation of cities may have served a purpose. Some theorize the alignment took advantage of seasonal winds for natural cooling. But the deeper mystery remains: who held the measuring stick? Were there itinerant architects traveling between cities, or did local councils meet to agree on codes? The absence of coercive imagery, no carvings of overseers with whips, hints at a different social contract, one where order emerged from cooperation rather than command. Yet for all its brilliance, this system had curious limits. While the cities shared layouts, they weren't carbon copies. Mohenjo-Daro's Great Bath has no direct parallel in Harappa, and some settlements show unique adaptations to local geography. This suggests the uniformity wasn't rigid dogma but a flexible framework, ancient urban planning with room for regional flair. Perhaps that's the most astonishing legacy, a civilization that mastered the balance between unity and diversity, creating cities that felt both familiar and distinct, like variations on a theme composed across the symphony of the Indus River. Around 1900 BC, something went terribly wrong in the Indus Valley. Streets that had thrived for centuries fell quiet, homes were abandoned. The meticulous drainage systems clogged with dust. This wasn't a slow fade, it was a civilization unraveling at the seams. But why? What could have brought such an advanced society to its knees? The debate over their downfall is a battleground of theories, each with its own compelling evidence, and none offering a definitive answer. One leading suspect is climate change. Geological records reveal a dramatic shift during this period. Monsoons weakened, rivers dried up, and the once reliable lifeline of the Indus River may have changed course. Imagine a megacity like today's Mumbai suddenly losing its water supply. Crops would fail, trade routes collapse, and populations scatter. Recent studies of ancient lake beds and stalagmites confirm prolonged droughts struck the region, aligning eerily with the civilization's decline. But was climate alone enough to topple a society so resilient? Some argue no, pointing out that other cultures weathered similar shifts without complete disintegration. Then there's the river theory. The Gaga Hakra, once thought to be a mythical Saraswati River described in later texts, may have been a vital artery for the Indus people. Satellite imagery shows its ancient channels, now bone dry, threading through dozens of settlements. If this river vanished diverted by tectonic shifts or siphoned away by changing rainfall, entire cities would have been left stranded in a desert. Yet excavations reveal no mass graves, no signs of desperate last stands. Instead, there's orderly abandonment, like a controlled evacuation. Invasion once seemed the obvious answer. Early archaeologists pointed to scattered skeletons at Mohenjo-Daro as evidence of a violent end. But this theory has crumbled under scrutiny. Those massacre victims, they date to different centuries, and there's no widespread destruction layer across Indus sites. No foreign weapons, no sudden cultural shift. If invaders came, they left no clear mark. Perhaps the collapse was economic. The Indus Valley was a trading powerhouse, their goods reaching Mesopotamia and beyond. If their partners faltered, or if trade routes were disrupted by climate or political unrest, the entire system could have destabilized. A single broken link in a vast chain, the truth likely lies in a tapestry of disasters, a prolonged drought starving cities, rivers shifting, cutting off transport, trade networks fraying, and with no central authority to coordinate a response, the social contract may have dissolved. People didn't die out, they moved on, adapting as humans always do. Recent DNA studies show their genetic legacy lives on in South Asian populations today. The civilization didn't vanish, it transformed, leaving behind empty cities as monuments to a lesson we're still learning. Even the mightiest societies are fragile when the earth itself turns against them. In a world where ancient history is often written in blood, the Indus Valley stands out for its eerie silence on the subject of war. While Egypt's pharaohs boasted of vanquished enemies on temple walls and Mesopotamian kings piled up skulls as trophies, The archaeological record of the Indus cities holds almost no traces of weapons, no grand depictions of conquest, no imposing fortifications designed to repel invaders. This absence is so striking that it forces us to reconsider everything we assume about how early civilizations maintained power. Were they truly a utopian society that rejected violence, or have we simply failed to recognize the subtle signs of conflict buried in their ruins? The evidence or lack thereof paints a paradoxical picture. Excavations have turned up arrowheads and spear tips, but these are vanishingly rare compared to the abundance of tools for farming, crafting, and construction. Even more telling is the architecture. While contemporaneous cities like Uruk in Mesopotamia built towering defensive walls, the Indus settlements prioritized something entirely different: accessibility. Their wide streets, open layouts, and unfortified entrances suggest cities designed for movement and trade rather than defense. The few structures that might be interpreted as watchtowers could just as easily have been granaries or water tanks. This isn't to say violence was absent altogether. A handful of skeletons from Mohenjo-Daro show signs of trauma: a fractured skull here, a wounded arm there, but these could stem from accidents, domestic disputes, or isolated skirmishes rather than organized warfare. Unlike the mass graves of ancient battlefields found elsewhere, there's no smoking gun, no layer of ash and arrowheads to signal a catastrophic attack. Even the famed massacre at Mohenjo-Daro, once thought to prove a violent end, has been debunked. The scattered bones date to different eras, suggesting natural deaths rather than a single catastrophic event. Theories about this peaceful facade diverge dramatically. Some scholars propose that the Indus people resolved conflicts through trade and diplomacy, maintaining stability across a vast region through shared cultural values rather than coercion. Their standardized weights, measures, and city layouts hint at a network of communities cooperating rather than competing. Others argue that warfare might have taken forms invisible to archaeology: ritualized combat, wooden weapons that decayed, or conflicts fought far from city centers in borderlands now lost to time. Perhaps the most provocative idea is that their peace was an illusion of preservation. Unlike stone carvings which endure, wooden clubs or leather armor would have vanished millennia ago. Even their art offers no clarity. The few surviving seals show animals and deities, not warriors or battles. Without deciphered texts to confirm or deny, we're left with a civilization that seems to have sidestepped the violence that defined its peers, unless we've been looking in all the wrong places. What makes this mystery so compelling is its modern resonance. In a world where history is so often framed as a series of conquests, the Indus Valley offers an alternative narrative, one where urban sophistication might have flourished without the shadow of the sword. Yet the quiet, nagging question remains: is this a story of true harmony, or merely an archaeological blind spot waiting to be uncovered? The answer, much like their undeciphered script, lingers just beyond our grasp. Amid the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, one artifact stands apart: a small but commanding stone figure barely 7 inches tall, yet radiating an authority that has earned it the nickname Priest King. With its intricately patterned robe, serene half-closed eyes, and a headband that might signify royalty or divinity, this statue feels like a direct gaze from the past. But here's the puzzle: why is it virtually alone? In a civilization that produced thousands of seals and figurines, this is one of the very few human-like representations showing such clear status and craftsmanship. Who was this figure meant to be, and why didn't the Indus people leave us more of these tantalizing glimpses into their power structure? The statue's details are a study in contradictions. The figure's posture is meditative, almost priestly, with hands resting gently in its lap, a far cry from the aggressive stances of Mesopotamian warrior kings. Yet the ornate cloak, decorated with trefoil designs that may have been filled with precious pigments, screams elite status. The headband's circular ornament has sparked endless debate. Is it a simple decoration, a symbol of office, or even a representation of a third eye? The absence of weapons or any insignia of conquest only deepens the enigma. Unlike the glorified battle scenes of other ancient cultures, this figure exudes calm authority, as if power were measured in wisdom rather than warlords. What's especially baffling is the scarcity of comparable artifacts. The Indus Valley's artistic legacy is rich in animal motifs and abstract symbols, but human representations are rare and often crude tiny terracotta figurines of dancers or mothers, not rulers. This makes the priest king a stunning exception. Some scholars argue its uniqueness suggests it wasn't part of a broader tradition but a singular object, perhaps commemorating an actual leader or spiritual guide. Others propose that stone sculptures like this were once common but perished over time, leaving this one as a rare survivor. Theories about its identity split along fascinating lines. The priest interpretation leans on parallels with later South Asian traditions, where ritual specialists held immense sway. The figure's contemplative pose and possible ritual markings could hint at a role bridging earthly and divine realms. The king camp, meanwhile, points to the robe's sophistication, a garment too elaborate for an ordinary citizen, implying a ruler who derived authority from governance rather than force. Then there's the wild card theory. What if it's neither? Could this be a revered ancestor, a mythical hero, or even a deity in human form? Equally puzzling is the question of audience. Most Indus seals were practical, used in trade or administration, but this statue, with its delicate carving and lack of wear, feels ceremonial. Was it displayed in a space of power now lost to erosion? Hidden away for rituals, or perhaps it was a prototype for a larger monument we'll never find. The silence is deafening. Without inscriptions or comparable artifacts, the priest king remains a solitary sentinel from a civilization that carefully guarded its secrets, a single stone face in a crowd of unanswered questions. Among the most evocative artifacts from the Indus Valley is a tiny bronze figurine barely 4 inches tall, the famed dancing girl. With her confident stance, one hand resting on her hip, the other dangling loosely, she exudes a vitality that bridges millennia. But this isn't just a masterpiece of ancient artistry, it's a provocative clue in a larger mystery. Why do female figurines like this dominate the archaeological record, while depictions of queens or goddesses remain conspicuously absent? The contrast forces us to reconsider everything we assume about women's roles in one of history's most enigmatic civilizations. Terracotta and bronze figurines of women unearthed across Indus sites vastly outnumber male representations. Many, like the dancing girl, capture moments of everyday life: women grinding grain, cradling children, or adorned with intricate jewelry. Their postures are dynamic, their features expressive, suggesting a culture comfortable portraying women as active participants in society. The sheer variety hints at diverse roles, from laborers to performers, with no single archetype dominating. Yet here's the puzzle: none of these figures wear crowns, hold scepters, or appear in contexts clearly marking them as rulers or deities. Unlike Ishtar in Mesopotamia or Hathor in Egypt, Indus women seem celebrated for their humanity rather than deified for their power. This absence of divine or royal feminine imagery is especially startling given the civilization's sophistication. Were women excluded from formal power structures, or did their influence operate in ways that didn't require stone monuments? One theory points to the figurines themselves as evidence of domestic rituals. Perhaps women led household ceremonies or passed down oral traditions, their authority rooted in kinship rather than throne rooms. Another possibility is that gender distinctions were fluid, with power shared across sexes without the need for ostentatious symbols. The dancing girl's unself-conscious pose might reflect a society where women moved freely in public spaces, their status unremarkable enough not to require constant artistic glorification. Then there's the tantalizing link to later cultures. Some scholars trace threads from these figurines to the yakshis of Hindu-Buddhist art, spirits of fertility and nature, or even to the maternal goddesses that emerge in later Indian traditions. But without inscriptions or mythic narratives, the connection remains speculative. The contrast between the vibrant, individualized figurines and the missing queens leaves us straddling two possibilities. Either the Indus Valley was a rare ancient society where women's value wasn't tied to formalized power, or we fundamentally misread the silence. Perhaps their grandest tributes to feminine divinity were made of perishable materials, woven textiles, painted wood, or songs now lost to time. The dancing girl, frozen mid-step, seems to taunt us with all we'll never know. Does her poised defiance reflect a woman's everyday reality, or is she an exception, a fleeting glimpse of a world more complex than the artifacts suggest? In a civilization that left no love poetry or legal codes, her silent eloquence remains one of the most poignant windows into a society that, like so much about the Indus Valley, refuses to be easily categorized. On the sun-baked island of Dholavira, surrounded by the salt flats of modern-day Gujarat, lies one of the Indus Valley's most staggering engineering feats, a water management system so advanced it rivals modern municipal planning. While Mohenjo-Daro boasted its Great Bath, Dholavira's network of reservoirs, dams, and channels reveals a civilization that didn't just adapt to its environment but reshaped it with almost prophetic foresight. 16 massive reservoirs carved from stone and connected by intricate sluices could hold millions of gallons of water in a region where rainfall was and still is wildly unpredictable. The question isn't just how they built it, but why they invested such staggering effort in a place where every drop of water was a battle against the elements. The scale of Dholavira's hydraulics defies expectations. Channels cut through the city with surgical precision, diverting seasonal monsoon floods into storage tanks that would sustain the population through drought. Some reservoirs were lined with stone blocks so tightly fitted that even today they retain their waterproof integrity. Others featured filtering systems to remove silt, a detail that speaks to an intimate understanding of hydrology. But the real marvel lies in the gradients engineers calculated slopes down to the centimeter, ensuring water flowed effortlessly from hilltop catchments to the lowest neighborhoods. This wasn't just plumbing, it was a mathematical dance with gravity. Yet for all its technical brilliance, the system's design suggests something more than practicality. The largest reservoirs flank the city's citadel like ceremonial moats, their positions too deliberate to be purely functional. Were these water tanks sacred spaces, their shimmering surfaces reflecting not just the sky but the Indus people's reverence for the life-giving force of water? The alignment of channels with solstices adds weight to this theory. Some scholars argue the entire network doubled as a calendrical device, with water levels marking seasonal transitions. Maintenance poses another enigma. Keeping such a system operational would have required constant labor dredging silt, repairing channels, allocating water fairly. Yet there's no evidence of a coercive authority enforcing this work. Instead, carvings and seals depict collective rituals, hinting at a society where water management was a communal sacrament. Perhaps the reservoirs weren't just infrastructure but symbols of social cohesion, their upkeep a shared duty woven into the fabric of daily life, the cruelest irony. Dholavira's mastery of water may have hastened its downfall. As monsoons waned and the Gagahakra River vanished, even this hydraulic marvel couldn't outlast the climate's wrath. The reservoirs, once brimming, became hollow monuments to a civilization that tamed water until the earth itself refused to cooperate. Buried among the thousands of artifacts from the Indus Valley, one small stone seal has ignited a debate that stretches across millennia, the so-called Pashupati seal. At first glance, it's unassuming, a carved figure seated cross-legged, surrounded by animals, his head crowned with what might be horns or a headdress. But this tiny image has sparked enormous controversy. Could this be an early incarnation of Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction and renewal, worshipped thousands of years before the earliest known Hindu texts? Or is it evidence of a completely independent belief system, one that vanished along with the civilization that created it? The parallels are undeniably striking. The figure's posture mirrors the meditative stance of later yogic traditions, while the animals a tiger, elephant, rhinoceros, and buffalo echo Shiva's role as Pashupati, lord of beasts. The horns resemble the crescent moon adorning Shiva's hair in classical iconography. Even the seal's apparent emphasis on fertility and regeneration aligns with Shiva's dual nature as both destroyer and creator. For proponents of the Shiva connection, this isn't just coincidence. It's a direct cultural thread linking the Indus Valley to the religious tapestry of modern South Asia. But skeptics raise compelling counterpoints. Without deciphered text to confirm the figure's identity, we're left interpreting symbols through the lens of later traditions, a dangerous game of archaeological hindsight. The horned headdress, for example, might signify a shaman or tribal elder rather than a deity. The animals could represent clan totems or a symbolic map of the natural world, not divine dominion. And the seal's isolation is telling. If this was a proto-Shiva, why don't we find more variations or elaborate depictions in other Indus artifacts? The debate touches on a deeper philosophical rift in archaeology. Are we seeing continuity, a spiritual idea that evolved over centuries, or merely projecting familiar patterns onto an alien culture? Some scholars propose a middle path. Perhaps the seal reflects a shared pool of proto-religious ideas that later coalesced into Hinduism rather than a direct predecessor. After all, concepts like meditation, reverence for animals, and the cyclical nature of existence aren't exclusive to any one tradition. What makes this mystery so tantalizing is its implications. If the Pashupati seal does represent an early Shiva, it would push the origins of Hinduism back by over 2,000 years, suggesting an unbroken spiritual lineage from the Indus Valley to the present. But if it's unrelated, the seal becomes something even more extraordinary, a glimpse into a lost theology, a way of seeing the divine that flourished and then disappeared, leaving only this cryptic stone to whisper of beliefs we may never fully understand. Either way, the tiny artifact stands as a testament to the enduring human quest to give form to the sacred, whether through the familiar faces of gods we know or the silent enigmas of those we've forgotten. Among the countless artifacts unearthed from the Indus Valley, one motif stands out for its strange dominance: a creature carved into over 1,000 seals, yet defying easy identification. With the body of a bull, a single curved horn, and an almost mythical bearing, this so-called unicorn appears more frequently than all other animals combined. Why would a civilization known for its realistic depictions of elephants, rhinos, and tigers obsess over a creature that may never have existed? The answer could lie at the intersection of commerce, spirituality, and a cultural fingerprint unlike any other in the ancient world. The unicorn seals are miniature masterpieces of precision, each barely an inch wide yet etched with astonishing detail. The creature often stands before a ritual object resembling an incense burner, its head tilted proudly, its posture rigid with symbolic weight. Unlike the lively scenes of hunting or herding found in Mesopotamian art, these images feel frozen in ceremony, as if capturing a moment of reverence rather than daily life. What's baffling is the near-total absence of this motif outside the seals. No statues, no murals, no clay figurines. It's as if the unicorn belonged exclusively to the world of pressed clay and trade. Scholars have spun countless theories to explain its prevalence. Some argue it was a corporate logo of sorts, a unifying symbol stamped onto goods to certify their origin across the vast Indus trade network. The standardization is striking. Whether found in coastal Lothal or northern Harappa, the unicorn's design varies little, suggesting a shared cultural shorthand. Others see religious significance in the recurring ritual objects nearby, proposing the creature served as a spiritual guardian for merchants or a totem against misfortune. The single horn might symbolize power concentrated into one sacred point, a concept echoed in later Hindu and Buddhist iconography. Then there's the biological enigma. Was this purely mythical, or could it represent a real animal distorted by artistic convention? Some point to the Indian rhinoceros, whose single horn curves backward similarly, but why omit the rhino's distinctive armor-like skin? Another camp suggests it depicts an aurochs, an ancient wild ox in profile, with the second horn hidden behind the first. Yet the deliberate elegance of these carvings hints at intentional myth-making, not artistic error. The most tantalizing clue lies in what the unicorn replaces. In contemporaneous Mesopotamia and Egypt, seals glorified kings and gods. The Indus unicorn, by contrast, seems to embody something more abstract, an idea rather than an individual. Its ubiquity might reflect a society that valued collective identity over personal glorification, where trade and ritual intertwined seamlessly. Or perhaps we've misunderstood the imagery entirely. Without the key to their script, the silent unicorn keeps its secrets, standing eternally at the threshold between the known and the unknowable. While the pharaohs of Egypt built pyramids to house their mummified bodies and Mesopotamian kings filled gold-lined tombs with sacrificed servants, the Indus Valley tells a strikingly different story, one where the dead rest in simple pits, their bones unadorned by treasure, their graves lacking the grand declarations of power found elsewhere. This absence of royal burials isn't just an archaeological footnote. It's a direct challenge to our assumptions about how ancient civilizations structured their societies. Were the Indus people truly egalitarian, or have we simply failed to uncover their equivalent of Tutankhamun's tomb? The evidence on the ground is stark. Excavations at major sites like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro reveal cemeteries where the dead were buried with modest offerings, a few pottery vessels, perhaps a bead necklace or two, but no jewels, no weapons, no golden mask. Even the grave pits themselves show little variation in size or construction, suggesting a society where status distinctions weren't marked by funerary extravagance. Compare this to Ur's royal cemetery, where Mesopotamian elites were interred with chariots, lyres, and even entire retinues of attendants, and the contrast couldn't be sharper. But does this simplicity reflect reality, or are we missing a crucial piece of the puzzle? One compelling theory suggests the Indus elite might have practiced alternative funerary rites, cremation, sky burials, or river disposals that left no trace. After all, if their cities prioritized water through structures like the Great Bath, perhaps their afterlife rituals were equally fluid. The Ganges culture that followed centuries later revered river immersion as sacred. Could this tradition have roots in the Indus Valley's lost customs? Then there's the tantalizing possibility that royal tombs exist but lie undiscovered. The sprawling metropolis of Dholavira, for instance, features an elevated castle area with unexplored chambers beneath. Could these hold the secrets of Indus royalty? Or might the grandest burials have been built in perishable materials, wooden sarcophagi or bamboo platforms long since decayed? The absence of stone monuments doesn't necessarily mean an absence of hierarchy. Perhaps the most radical interpretation is that the Indus people genuinely rejected the concentration of power seen elsewhere. Their cities show no palaces, no temples glorifying rulers, no art depicting conquests. Even their housing suggests relative equality, no cramped slums overshadowed by sprawling villas. In this view, their burial practices weren't an omission but a conscious choice, reflecting a social order where leadership was rotational, communal, or simply less ostentatious. Yet contradictions linger. The exquisite priest-king statue hints at some form of authority, while the standardization of bricks and city layouts required coordination that typically implies centralized control. Could their elites have wielded influence in life but disdained displays of it in death? Or were their markers of status made of materials too ephemeral to survive embroidered textiles, feasting rituals, or oral traditions now lost? What makes this mystery so resonant is its modern echoes. In a world still grappling with inequality, the Indus Valley offers a provocative alternative model, a civilization that may have prized collective well-being over individual glorification. But until we uncover a royal crypt or decipher their script, we're left to wonder, were they truly the ancient world's great egalitarians, or have their kings simply hidden themselves too well? Scattered across the ruins of Mesopotamian cities like Ur and Kish, tiny stone seals etched with the familiar symbols of the Indus Valley tell a story of trade stretching over 1,000 miles. Yet this exchange remains one of history's most silent collaborations. These seals, found nestled among Mesopotamian artifacts, weren't mere trinkets. They were the bureaucratic glue of ancient commerce, stamped onto bales of cotton or clay tags to certify goods from the distant Indus. How did these two powerhouse civilizations, separated by deserts and mountain ranges, sustain such a robust trading network without a single surviving treaty, royal marriage record, or even an account of conflict? The evidence paints a picture of commerce so smooth it defies the chaos we typically associate with ancient economies. The logistics alone boggle the mind. Indus merchants likely shipped luxury goods, lustrous carnelian beads, fragrant ivory, and intricately patterned cotton textiles by riverboats down the Indus to coastal ports like Lothal. From there, daring sailors would have braved the Arabian Sea's monsoon winds, following the coastline to the Persian Gulf and finally up the Tigris or Euphrates to Mesopotamian markets. This wasn't occasional barter but a systematized exchange. Mesopotamian texts mention a land called Meluha, now widely believed to be the Indus region, describing it as a source of exotic treasures. One tablet even records a Meluhan interpreter working in Mesopotamia, hinting at a multicultural trading class who bridged languages and customs, yet the absence of diplomatic fanfare is striking. While Egypt and Mesopotamia exchanged royal letters and gilded gifts, the Indus-Mesopotamia connection shows no such pomp, no grand embassies, no boastful inscriptions commemorating alliances. Instead, the trade seems to have thrived on mutual pragmatism. Indus weights and measures so precise they were likely government-regulated, match Mesopotamian standards, suggesting agreed-upon rules of exchange. The sheer volume of Indus-style beads found in Mesopotamian tombs implies this wasn't just elite luxury trade but a flow of goods that trickled down to ordinary consumers. The real mystery lies in what wasn't traded. While Mesopotamian texts speak of receiving timber, metals, and gems from Meluha, Indus cities show almost no imported Mesopotamian goods beyond a handful of silver trinkets. Was this a one-sided exchange, with the Indus Valley acting as ancient Asia's manufacturing hub? Or did their imports, perishable goods like oils, fabrics, or foodstuffs, vanish without trace? Even more puzzling is the lack of military tension. Trade routes in antiquity were often contested, yet there's no evidence of forts guarding Indus outposts or Mesopotamian campaigns to control this lucrative pipeline. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue comes from what the Mesopotamians didn't say. Their records describe Meluhan ships docking at their ports but never mention Indus armies or diplomats. This paints a scenario where the Indus people prioritized economic influence over political expansion, a rare feat in an age defined by empires. Their seals, found in Mesopotamia but never bearing Mesopotamian motifs, suggest cultural pride without assimilation, a silent insistence on their own identity amid the exchange. The enigma endures, two civilizations conducting business on a grand scale, weaving a web of interdependence without the usual threads of warfare or royal spectacle. In a world where trade often followed the sword, the Indus-Mesopotamia connection stands as a quiet testament to the power of pure commerce, and a reminder of how much we still don't know about the unwritten rules that shaped our ancient past. Buried beneath the dust of Mohenjo-Daro's ruins lies one of history's most understated revolutions, small stone cubes so precisely calibrated they could pass for modern laboratory equipment. These aren't mere pebbles, they're the Indus Valley's standardized weights, a system of measurement so exact it followed a strict binary progression. The smallest unit weighs around 0.875 grams, with larger weights doubling that mass in perfect sequence: 1.75 grams, 3.5 grams, 7 grams, and onward. Such mathematical harmony didn't emerge by accident. This was a civilization that didn't just trade, it engineered commerce with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker, leaving us to wonder who orchestrated this uniformity across settlements separated by hundreds of miles, and what does it reveal about their economic soul? The brilliance of this system becomes apparent when you handle replicas of these weights. Carved from chert, a rock resistant to wear, they're polished to near-identical smoothness regardless of where they're found, whether in the coastal warehouses of Lothal or the inland markets of Harappa. Archaeologists have unearthed hundreds, and their consistency is staggering. Deviations rarely exceed 5%, a margin that would satisfy many modern scales. But the real magic lies in their distribution. Unlike ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, where weights varied by city or temple, the Indus system was universal. A merchant in Dholavira could trade with a partner in Rakhigarhi without haggling over measurements, because 7 grams here meant 7 grams there. This level of coordination hints at something radical for its time: a centralized economic authority. Someone, somewhere, decided what a standard weight would be, then enforced that decision across an area larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. But here's the twist: we've found no tax records, no bureaucratic ceilings, no evidence of the heavy-handed governance typically needed to maintain such control. This raises a provocative possibility. What if compliance wasn't compelled by force but embraced as collective advantage? The weight's near-perfect replication suggests craftsmen took pride in their role as guardians of fairness, their work audited not by soldiers but by the mutual trust of traders. The binary progression itself is a marvel. Doubling weights isn't just mathematically elegant, it's practical. Need half a measure, use the next smallest weight. Need to combine amounts, stack the cubes like building blocks. This system enabled rapid calculations without written arithmetic, critical in a society where most deals were likely struck orally. Comparisons with contemporary civilizations underscore how advanced this was. Mesopotamian weights followed irregular sexagesimal base 60 systems requiring complex conversions. The Indus approach was so intuitive that elements of it survived in South Asian bazaars for millennia. Yet the greatest mystery isn't how they standardized weights, but why they invested such effort in doing so. One compelling answer lies in their trade networks. When your carnelian beads travel to Mesopotamia and your cotton sails to Oman, consistency becomes currency. A foreign merchant might not speak your language, but they'd trust a weight that matched their last transaction. This reliability may explain the Indus Valley's economic dominance. They didn't just sell goods, they sold predictability. But was this system purely pragmatic, or did it carry deeper meaning? Some scholars note that the smallest weight, 0.875 grams, corresponds roughly to the mass of a raktika seed, a traditional Indian measure still used in goldsmithing centuries later. This hints at a cultural continuum where precision wasn't just policy but tradition. Others see spiritual significance in the binary sequence, mirroring dualities like earth and sky or life and death. Whatever the motivation, these unassuming stones whisper of a civilization that measured its values as carefully as its goods, leaving behind not just weights but a weighted question: can fairness be etched into rock? And if so, why did we ever settle for less? Standing at the heart of Mohenjo-Daro, the so-called citadel looms over the city, a massive, man-made plateau rising 40 feet above the surrounding streets. Unlike the crumbling ruins below, this structure retains an air of authority, its baked brick walls still imposing after 4,000 years. But for all its prominence, the citadel's true purpose remains one of the Indus Valley's most stubborn enigmas. Was it a fortress, a temple, an administrative hub, or something else entirely? The lack of definitive answers has turned this architectural puzzle into a battleground of competing theories, each reshaping our understanding of how this civilization organized power and space. The citadel's physical presence alone raises questions. Constructed on an artificial mound, it required staggering labor, millions of uniformly sized bricks hauled into place without the aid of beasts of burden or wheeled carts. Its walls show no obvious defensive features like arrow slits or reinforced gateways, yet its elevated position offers clear sight lines across the city. Inside, the layout defies easy categorization. There are no throne rooms, no treasure vaults, no barracks filled with weapons. Instead, archaeologists found a mix of structures, a possible granary with ventilation ducts, a colonnaded hall that might have hosted assemblies, and the enigmatic Great Bath. This eclectic combination suggests a space serving multiple functions, blurring the lines between the practical and the sacred. One prevailing theory casts the citadel as a religious nexus. The Great Bath's presence hints at ritual purification, while the surrounding courtyards could have accommodated large gatherings for ceremonies. Unlike Mesopotamian ziggurats, which reached skyward to connect with the divine, the Indus citadel spreads horizontally, emphasizing communal participation over solitary ascent. Yet the absence of altars, cult statues, or inscriptions leaves this interpretation frustratingly speculative. Without clear iconography or texts, we're left guessing whether priests once chanted here or if the space resonated with very different kinds of activity. A competing view sees the citadel as the brain of civic administration. The standardized bricks and city-wide drainage systems imply centralized planning, and what better place to coordinate such efforts than this elevated command center? The granary, if that's what it was, would have stored surplus crops, a vital resource for a society that likely taxed its citizens in grain rather than coin. The colonnaded hall might have functioned as a council chamber where elders or trade representatives negotiated agreements, but again, the evidence is circumstantial. No clay tablets record decrees, no seals mark official transactions, and no artifacts distinctly tie the space to bureaucratic functions. The defensive theory persists, albeit with caveats. While the citadel lacks overt military features, its elevation would have provided a strategic advantage during floods, a recurring threat in the Indus Valley. Some researchers propose it served as a refuge during emergencies, a place where citizens could retreat with their valuables when the rivers swelled. Others suggest its imposing stature alone may have been enough to deter conflict, projecting stability in a society that otherwise shows little signs of warfare. Perhaps the most radical idea is that the citadel wasn't exclusive at all. Unlike the walled acropolises of other ancient cities, which physically separated elites from commoners, Mohenjo-Daro's citadel appears accessible via broad staircases. Could this have been a truly public space where governance and ritual were participatory rather than imposed? The scarcity of luxury items in the citadel compared to residential areas fuels this hypothesis. If the elite lived elsewhere, the citadel's role shifts from a seat of power to a shared civic arena, an ancient equivalent of a town square combined with a courthouse and waterworks. The mystery deepens when we compare citadels across Indus sites. While Mohenjo-Daro's is monumental, Harappa's is smaller and less defined, and some settlements lack elevated platforms altogether. This inconsistency suggests the structure's functions may have evolved over time or varied by region, adapting to local needs rather than adhering to a rigid blueprint. What emerges is a portrait of a civilization that defies our usual categories. The citadel's ambiguity mirrors the broader Indus Valley paradox, a society capable of staggering uniformity in brick sizes but resistant to the centralized glorification of rulers or gods. Its silent walls refuse to declare whether they sheltered priests, bureaucrats, or ordinary citizens gathering to discuss the harvest. Until we decipher their script or uncover clearer clues, the citadel remains our architectural Rorschach test, its meaning shaped as much by our assumptions as by the bricks themselves. The ancient hymns of the Rigveda sing of a mighty river, the Saraswati, flowing from the mountains to the sea, its waters nurturing a flourishing civilization. For centuries, this was considered poetic mythology until modern satellite imagery revealed the ghostly outlines of a vast river system snaking through the very heart of the Indus Valley. The Ghaggar Hakra, now a seasonal trickle in India's Thar Desert, was once a roaring tributary matching the Vedic descriptions. Its dried-up channels trace a haunting question. Did the death of this river strangle the lifeblood of the Indus cities, and did its memory evolve into one of history's most enduring sacred legends? The evidence lies buried in the silt. Geological surveys show the Ghaggar Hakra was a perennial river until around 1900 BC, precisely when Indus settlements along its banks began emptying. Core samples reveal layers of fine, water-deposited sediment suddenly replaced by coarse sand, telling the story of a river that dwindled from a torrent to a seasonal stream, then vanished entirely. Towns like Kalibangan, built directly on its banks, show signs of desperate adaptation. Wells dug deeper, grain storage expanded before their ultimate abandonment. The timeline is damning. As the river died, so did the cities it sustained. But linking this ecological catastrophe to the Saraswati of legend opens a Pandora's box of debates. Some scholars argue the Ghaggar Hakra's identification with the Vedic Saraswati is purely coincidental, that the sacred river described in later texts was always allegorical, representing knowledge or enlightenment rather than a physical entity. Others counter that the geological and literary evidence aligns too perfectly to ignore. The Rigveda's mourning of the Saraswati's disappearance, she surpasses in majesty all other waters. Now she goes to the ocean unseen, reads like an eyewitness account of a civilization watching its lifeline evaporate. The cultural implications are profound. If the Saraswati was indeed the Ghaggar Hakra, then the Indus Valley's collapse wasn't just an ecological tragedy, but a spiritual rupture so deep it echoed through millennia. Later Hindu traditions transformed the lost river into a goddess of wisdom, her physical waters sublimated into metaphysical flow. Pilgrims still gather at the Triveni Sangam, where the Ganges and Yamuna meet, to honor the invisible third stream said to be the Saraswati, a ghost river haunting India's collective memory. Yet skeptics remind us that rivers shift constantly, and attributing an entire civilization's fall to one environmental factor oversimplifies a complex unraveling. The Indus Valley's decline was likely a tapestry of disasters: drought, trade collapse, social fragmentation, with the Saraswati's fate just one thread. What's undeniable is how a river's echo shaped history twice, first as an artery of survival, then as a metaphor for resilience, proving that even vanished waters can carve indelible marks in the bedrock of culture. While the grand temples of Egypt dazzled with towering statues and Mesopotamian palaces boasted intricate reliefs, the Indus Valley offers a striking contrast, an absence of large-scale art that feels almost intentional. Walk through the ruins of Harappa or Mohenjo-Daro, and you'll find no colossal kings carved in stone, no sweeping murals depicting battles or deities. Instead, the artistic legacy of this civilization is overwhelmingly small-scale. Delicate seals, palm-sized figurines, and the occasional pottery fragment etched with geometric patterns. This raises a provocative question. Did the Indus people reject monumental art as a matter of principle, or have we simply lost the fragile masterpieces they once created? The scarcity is hard to ignore. Where other ancient cultures used art to proclaim power, think of Pharaoh Ramses' Roman II towering effigies at Abu Simbel or the Assyrian lion hunt reliefs. The Indus Valley's creative output seems almost introverted. Their most iconic surviving artworks could fit in your hand: the dancing girl bronze, the Pashupati seal, the tiny clay carts and animal figurines. Even their architecture lacks decorative flair. Buildings are functional, their beauty lying in precise brickwork rather than ornamentation. This wasn't due to lack of skill. The craftsmanship on their seals rivals anything from the ancient world, but perhaps a different philosophy about art's purpose. One compelling theory suggests their art was ephemeral by design. Imagine vibrant murals painted on plastered walls that crumbled to dust, or wooden sculptures that decayed in the monsoon rains. The Indus people's choice of materials might explain the gap. While Egyptians worked in durable granite and Mesopotamians in baked clay, the Indus Valley could have favored perishable mediums, textiles, painted wood, or even intricate floor designs made with colored powders for festivals. Temporary art wouldn't leave traces, yet it might have held profound cultural significance, like the sand mandalas of Tibetan Buddhism or India's vibrant column patterns still drawn daily at doorways. Alternatively, their artistic energy may have been channeled into objects of utility rather than display. The dozens of meticulously crafted stone weights, the precisely proportioned bricks, the elegantly engineered wells, these could represent a culture that valued functional beauty over decorative grandeur. Even their most artistic creations, like the unicorn seals, served practical purposes in trade and administration. In this view, the Indus people's genius wasn't in glorifying rulers but in elevating the everyday, turning a water drain into a geometric marvel or a weighing stone into a mathematical masterpiece. The most radical interpretation, that the absence of monumental art reflects an absence of monumental ego. Without clear evidence of god kings or warrior elites, perhaps no individual or institution commanded the labor needed for colossal statues. Their artistic output, democratic in scale, widespread in distribution, might mirror a society where creativity was dispersed rather than concentrated. Those ubiquitous terracotta figurines of women and animals, they suggest art was personal, something to hold rather than behold, a companion rather than a proclamation. Yet contradictions linger. A handful of larger artifacts, like the priest-king statue, hint that some exceptions existed, and the seal's intricate carvings prove they could work on tiny canvases without sacrificing detail. Maybe their monuments weren't stone colossi but systems, the perfect grids of their cities, the mathematical harmony of their weights, the hydraulic brilliance of their baths. These were statements in their own way, testaments to a collective vision that didn't need to shout from palace walls. The silence of their art speaks volumes. In a world where ancient cultures often used scale to intimidate or deify, the Indus Valley's preference for the small and subtle feels like a quiet rebellion, or perhaps a different kind of wisdom. Their legacy whispers that art need not be monumental to be meaningful, and that absence, too, can be a clue to how a civilization saw itself. Among the quiet ruins of Mohenjo-Daro lie scattered human remains that once ignited a firestorm of speculation. Skeletons sprawled in streets and homes, their postures frozen in what early excavators interpreted as a final, violent struggle. When these bones were first uncovered in the 1920s, archaeologists hastily labeled them evidence of a horrific massacre, perhaps victims of invading Aryan hordes sweeping down from the north. But as modern science peers closer, this dramatic narrative crumbles like the ancient bricks surrounding the bodies, revealing a mystery far more complex than any ancient war. The original massacre theory rested on grim visuals: a cluster of skeletons, some with arms raised defensively, others curled protectively around children. One particularly haunting group became known as the family tragedy, a child cradled between two adults, their bones mingled in what seemed a shared moment of terror. Early researchers pointed to these as proof of sudden violence, tying them to Vedic texts describing the conquest of walled cities, but timelines refused to cooperate. Radiocarbon dating showed these individuals died centuries apart, some separated by generations. If this was a massacre, it unfolded in slow motion over hundreds of years, a scenario that makes little military sense. Newer investigations propose radically different explanations. Forensic anthropologists note the absence of weapon trauma on most bones. Instead, many skeletons show signs of chronic illness, bone lesions, spinal deformities, and markers of severe anemia. Could these have been victims not of swords, but of a creeping pandemic or environmental poisoning? Mohenjo-Daro's reliance on lead pipes for drinking water raises the specter of heavy metal contamination, while overcrowding and poor sanitation might have bred infectious diseases that cut down the vulnerable in waves. Then there's the disaster angle. The Indus Valley was no stranger to earthquakes, and seismic shifts could explain why some bodies appear mid-motion, buried suddenly under collapsing walls. Nearby geological faults remain active today, and sediment layers in the city show signs of massive flooding. A single catastrophic quake or a series of tremors might have sent panicked residents fleeing through streets only to be trapped by debris or surging waters. This would account for the jumbled poses without invoking invaders. The Aryan invasion theory itself has unraveled under genetic scrutiny. DNA studies of Harappan era remains show no evidence of a sudden population replacement. Instead, the genetic tapestry of South Asia reveals gradual mixing over millennia. No warlike conquest, just the slow interweaving of cultures. Even the once cited horse argument that Aryans introduced horses to the region, absent in Harappan sites, has weakened. Possible horse bones have since been identified at Indus settlements. What emerges is a portrait of ordinary lives ending in extraordinary circumstances. Those skeletons in the streets weren't warriors or victims of genocide, but likely citizens felled by the same forces that challenge societies today: disease, infrastructure failure, natural disasters. Their silent bones remind us that the past resists simple stories, and that sometimes the most haunting mysteries aren't about foreign invaders, but about how civilizations confront the fragility of their own existence. Among the menagerie of animals adorning Indus Valley seals, one figure stands out with primal power: the bull, charging with lowered horns, standing nobly beside ritual objects, or rendered in exquisite detail on pottery. This creature dominates the visual landscape of the civilization far more than lions, elephants, or even the enigmatic unicorn. But why this obsession? Was the bull merely a symbol of agricultural might, or did it carry deeper spiritual weight that echoes in the sacred bulls of later Hindu tradition? The answer lies at the crossroads of survival, symbolism, and a cultural thread that may stretch unbroken across 5,000 years. Consider the bull's practical importance first. As the engine of Indus agriculture, bulls plowed fields, hauled carts laden with harvests, and turned grinding stones for grain. Their muscle built cities brick by brick, their dung fertilized crops, and their very existence meant the difference between feast and famine. It's no surprise they appear everywhere, from children's clay toys to ceremonial seals. This was a creature integral to daily life, yet the reverence seems to transcend utility. On seals, bulls often stand beside what might be sacrificial altars or ritual vessels, their heads held high with an almost divine bearing. Some sport elaborate collars or decorations, suggesting they weren't just beasts of burden but honored participants in sacred acts. The parallels with later Hindu traditions are impossible to ignore. Fast forward 2 millennia, and Shiva's bull Nandi sits patiently outside temples across India, embodying strength, righteousness, and unwavering devotion. The Rig Veda, composed centuries after the Indus decline, already speaks of bulls as cosmic symbols. The thunder god Indra is hailed as bull among men, while the celestial steer represents Dharma itself. Could these be cultural inheritances from the Indus Valley? The physical resemblance is striking. One Harappan seal shows a bull with a protruding hump and curved horns identical to the zebu breed still revered in India today. But assuming direct continuity risks oversimplification. The Indus bulls lack explicit mythological trappings seen in later art, no crescent moons adorning their brows, no yogic sages seated beside them. Their context is more ambiguous. Some scholars argue they represent clan totems or regional identities rather than deities. A fascinating variation appears at the site of Dholavira, where a giant stone carving of a bull was placed near the city gates, less a religious icon perhaps than a civic emblem declaring communal pride. The most tantalizing clues come from the rare scenes where bulls interact with humans. One seal depicts a figure standing before a bull, holding what might be offerings or tools. Another shows a bull confronting a tiger-like creature, locked in timeless opposition. These glimpses suggest narratives now lost, legends or rituals that gave bulls symbolic weight beyond their physical form. Unlike Egyptian bull gods like Apis, explicitly tied to the afterlife, or Mesopotamian bull-men hybrids, the Indus creations feel grounded yet mysterious, a bridge between the tangible world and something ineffable. Perhaps the truth blends both perspectives. The bull's duality, its raw physical power coupled with serene dignity, may have made it the perfect symbol for a civilization that valued both practical ingenuity and spiritual depth. Whether as ancestor to Nandi or a standalone archetype, its enduring presence whispers of a culture that saw the sacred in the soil beneath their feet and the breath of the beasts that worked it. In the silence of their undeciphered script, the bulls remain, heavy with meaning we can sense but not yet fully hear. Walking through the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, one detail stands out with striking consistency: the deep red hue of every brick underfoot. These aren't the sun-dried clay bricks common in ancient Mesopotamia or Egypt, but meticulously fired bricks, baked in kilns at temperatures exceeding 900 degrees Celsius. Why would a civilization surrounded by scorching sunlight perfect for drying mud bricks go to such extraordinary lengths to fire their building materials? The answer lies at the intersection of environmental necessity, engineering ambition, and a cultural ethos that valued permanence in ways their contemporaries never imagined. The Indus Valley's obsession with fired bricks wasn't just aesthetic, it was a survival strategy. Unlike the Nile or Tigris-Euphrates regions, where annual floods were predictable, the Indus River was a capricious force. Monsoon rains could swell its banks violently, while shifting tectonic activity sometimes caused the river to change course entirely. Sun-dried bricks would dissolve like sugar in these conditions, but fired bricks resisted water like stone. This wasn't just convenient, it was revolutionary. While Mesopotamians rebuilt their mud brick walls after every flood, Indus cities stood resilient, their foundations unshaken by the whims of nature. The scale of production boggles the mind. Archaeologists estimate that Mohenjo-Daro alone required over 50 million bricks in its construction. Kilns discovered near Harappa show assembly line efficiency, with standardized sizes allowing mass production centuries before industrialization. The bricks themselves reveal meticulous quality control. Their 4:1 ratio, twice as wide as tall, 4 times as long as wide, wasn't just practical, it created interlocking stability that made walls virtually earthquake-resistant. But the true ingenuity lay in their adaptability. In the coastal city of Dholavira, builders mixed crushed shells into brick clay to neutralize salt corrosion. At Kalibangan, near the desert, bricks were fired longer to withstand abrasive sandstorms. This wasn't just a building material, it was a customizable shield against the environment, tailored to each settlement's unique challenges. The environmental cost, however, raises sobering questions. Firing bricks requires vast amounts of fuel, likely the slow-burning acacia and tamarind forest that once lined the Indus. Some scholars argue this deforestation may have exacerbated the civilization's eventual collapse, as denuded landscapes led to erosion and climate feedback loops. Yet for centuries, the trade-off delivered undeniable benefits: cleaner cities free of mud brick debris, sophisticated drainage systems that wouldn't crumble, and structures that still stand 4 millennia later. Perhaps the most telling clue comes from what they didn't build. While Egyptians reserved stone for pharaohs and Mesopotamians hoarded baked bricks for temples, Indus settlements used fired bricks universally, from granaries to gutter covers. This egalitarian durability hints at a society where communal resilience trumped elite glorification, where every citizen's home was designed to outlast the floods. In their unassuming bricks, we find a silent manifesto, a civilization that baked its values into the very fabric of daily life, one kiln-fired block at a time. At the edge of the ancient port city of Lothal, a massive rectangular basin cut into the earth has fueled archaeological debate for decades. Measuring an impressive 214 meters long and 36 meters wide, with walls still standing 2 meters high, this structure was initially celebrated as the world's oldest known dockyard, a marvel of maritime engineering from a civilization thought to have mastered sea trade. But scratch beneath the surface and the certainty evaporates. Was this really a bustling harbor where ships from Mesopotamia unloaded cargo, or does its true purpose lie somewhere between pragmatic water management and sacred symbolism? The dockyard theory hinges on ingenious design features. A narrow channel connects the basin to the nearby Saraswati River, complete with a clever sluice gate system that could regulate water flow, perfect for maintaining consistent depths as tides shifted. Excavations revealed burnt bricks lined with bitumen, a waterproofing technique also used in the Great Bath, suggesting the Indus people applied their hydraulic expertise to maritime needs. Even the location makes sense. Lothal sat at the crossroads of inland and oceanic trade routes, with access to precious materials like carnelian and ivory that filled Mesopotamian markets. The discovery of Persian Gulf seals and Mesopotamian-style pottery nearby seemed to seal the deal. This was a gateway to distant lands, yet skeptics point to troubling inconsistencies. The basin's walls lack the reinforcement typical of heavy-use docks, showing no signs of constant ship abrasion or mooring stones. Its floor, instead of sloping gently for beaching vessels, is flat, more suited to holding water than accommodating hulls. Alternative theories bloom in this ambiguity. Could it have been a massive reservoir ensuring fresh water during droughts or supplying irrigation canals? The surrounding region's vulnerability to monsoon fluctuations makes this plausible. Or perhaps it served as a ceremonial tank, akin to later Hindu stepwells where water itself was venerated. The presence of fire altars and ritual objects near the basin adds weight to this spiritual interpretation. The debate touches on a larger question about the Indus Valley's relationship with the sea. Unlike the Phoenicians or Minoans, who left behind vivid ship depictions and harbor installations, the Indus people's maritime legacy is frustratingly opaque. No boat models or shipyards have been definitively identified, and their seals show riverine vessels but no ocean-going craft. If Lothal's basin was indeed a dock, it stands as a solitary testament to a seafaring prowess that otherwise left no trace. Complicating matters further is the structure's later modifications. Evidence suggests it was repurposed multiple times, dredged, expanded, and even partially filled in. This fluidity hints that its function evolved with the city's needs, blurring the line between practical and sacred. Maybe it began as a reservoir during Lothal's early growth, then became a dock as trade flourished, only to revert to ritual use as the civilization declined. What remains undeniable is the sophistication behind its construction. The precision of the water channels, the foresight in flood control, the sheer labor mobilized to carve this space from the earth, all speak to a society that thought generations ahead. Whether it welcomed ships or stored monsoons, the Lothal Basin embodies the Indus Valley's quiet genius, an ability to shape landscapes for needs we can only half understand, leaving behind puzzles wrapped in brick and bitumen. Among the most imposing structures at Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro are the massive brick platforms long dubbed granaries by archaeologists, rows of ventilated chambers raised high above street level, their foundations sturdy enough to support immense weight. For decades, textbooks depicted these buildings as central grain storage hubs, key to feeding the Indus Valley's urban thousands. But scratch beneath the surface of this neat explanation, and the theory begins to crumble like sun-baked clay. Why would a civilization so meticulous about drainage design store perishable harvests in raised structures where grain could be exposed to moisture and pests? The answer might rewrite how we understand the economic heartbeat of these ancient cities. Take a closer look at the so-called granaries of Mohenjo-Daro. Their design defies agricultural logic. The parallel corridors and air vents, once thought to aerate grain, are oddly inefficient for bulk storage, better suited to circulating air around people or perishable goods. The absence of silos or sealed containers is glaring. Mesopotamian granaries used waterproof bitumen-lined pits, yet no such adaptations appear here. Even more telling are the floors. Excavations revealed no trace of the expected organic residue. No husks, no pollen, no rodent droppings that inevitably accompany large-scale grain storage. Alternative theories bloom in this absence of evidence. Some scholars propose these were vast trading warehouses where bundles of cotton, stacks of timber, or crates of precious lapis lazuli from Afghanistan awaited distribution. The raised platforms would have kept goods dry during floods, while the strategic location near citadels suggests oversight by civic authorities. Others see something more communal, perhaps covered market halls or public assembly spaces. The uniformity of the structures across cities hints at standardized civic infrastructure rather than ad hoc storage. The most radical reinterpretation casts these buildings as industrial rather than agricultural. Recent soil analyses near Harappa's granary show unusually high concentrations of copper slag and ash. Could those ventilated chambers have housed workshops for metalworkers or potters, their vents channeling smoke from kilns? Indus Valley craftsmen produced everything from delicate beads to bronze tools, and centralized production zones would explain the structure's scale. Yet the granary label persists in part because of a single dramatic find, a clay ceiling from Harappa depicting a cross-legged figure seated before what appears to be a conical grain heap. But even this clue is ambiguous. Similar motifs in later Indian art represent offerings or sacred mounds, not literal granaries. Without deciphering the Indus script, we're left projecting modern agricultural assumptions onto spaces that may have pulsed with very different energy, bustling with merchants haggling over textiles, artisans shaping molten metal, or citizens gathering under their shaded colonnades to escape the midday sun. What makes this mystery so pivotal is its ripple effect. If these weren't granaries, how did the Indus cities manage their food supply? Smaller, decentralized storage in neighborhood homes seems likely, echoing their egalitarian urban planning. The towering platforms may instead stand as monuments to something far more intriguing than wheat stockpiles, a society that prioritized trade, industry, or civic life in ways we're only beginning to grasp. Their true purpose remains locked away, not behind ancient doors, but beneath layers of interpretive habit we've yet to fully shake. As the Indus Valley Civilization neared its twilight, the hands that once shaped exquisite pottery and carved intricate seals began to falter. The archaeological record whispers of this decline, a slow unraveling of artistry that mirrors the civilization's broader collapse. Where early Harappan pottery gleamed with polished red finishes and precise geometric designs, late-period shards emerged thicker, cruder, their surfaces uneven and decorations reduced to hurried scratches. The iconic unicorn seals, once rendered with meticulous detail, now appear blurred and shallow, as if the craftsmen had lost either the skill or the will to maintain their ancestors' standards. This wasn't merely a change in taste, it was the fraying of a cultural fabric woven over centuries, three intertwining threads likely pulled at this unraveling. The first strains appear in the materials themselves. Later pottery shows signs of corner-cutting poorer quality clay, less controlled firing temperatures, and recycled fragments mixed into the paste. In Lothal's dying days, kilns that once produced gleaming black redware began churning out brittle vessels that cracked under routine use. Simultaneously, the steatite used for seals grew coarser, suggesting trade networks for fine stone had fractured. When your civilization's economy depends on standardized weights and recognizable seal impressions, such deterioration isn't just aesthetic, it's economic sabotage in slow motion. Environmental stress may have starved both artistry and artisans. As the Gagha-Hakra River vanished and monsoons failed, famine would have stalked the land. A potter struggling to feed their family has little time to perfect brushstrokes, nor does a starving merchant prioritize commissioning intricate seals. Layers of silt at Kalibangan reveal floods that may have destroyed workshops, while drought-parched Dholavira shows signs of water-intensive crafts like dye production being abandoned first. The hands that shaped civilization literally dried up, cracked like the earth they once mastered. Yet material scarcity only explains part of the story. The social glue holding specialized craftsmanship together also dissolved. Early Indus workshops show evidence of multi-generational skill transmission, with techniques refined over lifetimes. But in layers dating to 1800 BC, we find potters mixing styles haphazardly, Harappan motifs colliding with foreign influences in disjointed ways. At Harappa, a single late-period seal bears both a degraded unicorn and a crude Mesopotamian-style star, as if grasping at vanishing identities. This wasn't mere imitation, it was cultural vertigo. The most poignant evidence comes from what stopped being made entirely. The famous dancing girl bronzes vanish from the record, replaced by rudimentary clay figurines. Bead making, once a scientific art with drilled carnelian so precise it required magnification, devolved into rough imitations strung on twine. Like a language losing its vocabulary, each faded craft narrowed the civilization's ability to express and perhaps even comprehend its own identity. What emerges is a portrait of collapse in miniature. A single poorly fired pot means little, but thousands signal a society losing control of its defining technologies. Unlike the sudden sack of cities like Troy or the Indus decline whispers through these small failures, a master carver's chisel left dull, a kiln's fire burning unevenly, generations of knowledge evaporating without transmission. The seals grow simpler not because artisans forgot how to carve, but because the complex economy requiring those seals no longer existed to demand them. In the end, the silent decline of craftsmanship may be the most eloquent epitaph this civilization left behind, a record of dissolution written not in grand ruins, but in the quiet despair of hands that once shaped wonders. Among the shards of broken pottery strewn across Indus Valley sites, a curious pattern emerges: tiny, hastily etched symbols that seem to dance between practicality and mystery. Unlike the carefully carved seals bearing the civilization's famous script, these marks are rougher, simpler, often reduced to just one or two strokes. Are they the ancient equivalent of a potter's signature, a buyer's tally mark, or something far more intriguing? The answer could rewrite our understanding of how deeply literacy permeated this lost society. The contrast between these pottery marks and the formal Indus script is stark. While the seals display intricate symbols arranged in precise sequences, some with over 15 characters, the pottery inscriptions are brutally minimal. A single zigzag, a crossed circle, or a looping line scratched into clay before firing, At first glance, they resemble the kind of shorthand artisans still used today to denote batch numbers or workshop origins. Excavations at Harappa even revealed clusters of pots bearing identical marks, as if one prolific potter's wares were tagged for easy identification. But anomalies disrupt this tidy explanation. Some marks recur across distant sites, suggesting they weren't just personal signatures but part of a shared system. A particular U-shaped symbol, for instance, appears on fragments from Lothal on the coast to Rakhigarhi hundreds of miles inland. Even more puzzling are potsherds where these simple marks cluster in groups, mimicking the linear arrangement of the formal script. Could these be abbreviations like ancient texting condensing longer phrases into a few symbols? The materials tell another story. While seals were carved into durable stone or faience, destined to last generations, pottery marks were ephemeral, scratched onto vessels meant for daily use. This dichotomy hints at a society with tiered literacy, an official script for administrative elites and a pared-down vernacular for the masses. Think of it as the difference between a legal document and a grocery list. Both convey information, but with vastly different complexity. The most tantalizing theory connects these marks to a precursor of Brahmi, the script that would emerge in India over a millennium later. Some symbols bear uncanny resemblance to early Brahmi numerals and letters, raising the possibility of an unbroken, if underground, tradition of writing. If true, it would mean the Indus Valley's linguistic legacy didn't vanish but evolved quietly in workshops and kitchens, passed down through hands that shaped clay rather than carved stone. Yet skepticism lingers. Without bilingual inscriptions or longer texts, the marks resist definitive interpretation. Could they be purely functional, recording vessel capacity or firing temperatures? At Kalibangan, marks appear exclusively on the bases of pots out of sight during use, which might support a logistical purpose. Alternatively, some researchers propose they served as magical symbols, akin to the Nazar Batu, marks still painted on South Asian pottery to ward off evil. What's undeniable is their ubiquity. From humble cooking pots to elaborate storage jars, these marks transcend class and function, suggesting a society where even the most mundane objects carried a whisper of symbolic meaning. Whether practical or profound, they offer a rare glimpse into the minds of ordinary Indus people, not kings or priests, but potters, traders, and homemakers who left their mark in the simplest, most enduring way, by etching their story into clay one stroke at a time. Among the most evocative artifacts from the Indus Valley are the terracotta figurines of women, curved hips, exaggerated breasts, and ornate headdresses frozen in clay for millennia. Dubbed Mother Goddess statues by early archaeologists, these palm-sized figures have sparked debates as fiery as the kilns that birthed them. Were they sacred objects of worship, symbols of domestic life, or simply ancient toys meant to amuse children? The truth may lie scattered across cultures and centuries, waiting to be pieced together like fragments of a broken pot. Look closely at these figurines and contradictions emerge. Some stand poised with hands on hips, their assertive postures belying the passive fertility idol label slapped on them during colonial-era excavations. Others cradle infants or grind grain, capturing snapshots of daily labor rather than divine grandeur. Their jewelry and hairstyles vary wildly: elaborate coiled braids in Harappa, chunky necklaces in Mohenjo-Daro, suggesting regional identities rather than a monolithic goddess cult. Most perplexing of all is their context, found in homes rather than temples, tucked between cooking pots and spindle whorls, as if they were ordinary keepsakes rather than objects of veneration. Parallels with other ancient cultures only deepen the mystery. Compare them to the voluptuous Venus figurines of Neolithic Europe, and the fertility symbol theory gains traction. Yet the Indus figures lack the exaggerated sexual features of their Paleolithic counterparts: no swollen bellies or pronounced vulvas. Contrast them with Mesopotamian Ishtar statues, and the difference is stark. While Ishtar holds lions and wears battle regalia, the Indus women clutch babies or household tools. Even their production suggests mundanity. Crude mold-made duplicates appear alongside finely crafted originals, implying some were mass-produced for widespread use rather than singular ritual importance. The household deity theory offers a compelling middle path. Much like later Hindu traditions where miniature clay goddesses, grama devatas, guard village thresholds, these figurines might have served as domestic protectors, spiritual smoke alarms warding off misfortune from individual homes. Their frequent discovery near hearths and storage jars supports this idea. At Dholavira, a cluster was found buried beneath a house's foundation, a practice echoing modern rituals where deities are planted to bless new constructions. But dismissing them as mere toys feels equally reductive. While some show wear from handling, others bear traces of ochre pigment or soot, signs they participated in rituals involving fire or offerings. Their stylistic evolution is telling. Early specimens boast intricate details, while late-period figurines grow increasingly abstract, as if the meaning behind the form was fading along with the civilization itself. Perhaps the most radical interpretation is that they represent neither gods nor toys, but idealized portraits of actual women. The variety in their attire and poses could mirror real societal roles: mothers, artisans, dancers captured in clay as tributes or teaching tools. In this light, they become a rare window into how the Indus people saw themselves, reflecting values where female labor and lineage held visible pride of place. The silence surrounding these figurines speaks volumes. Without inscriptions or temple contexts, they resist neat categorization, challenging our instinct to separate the sacred from the mundane. In their sturdy clay forms, we glimpse a civilization comfortable with ambiguity, where the divine might dwell as easily in a child's hand as in the smoke of a hearth fire, and where the line between goddess and grandmother was never meant to be sharply drawn. In the quiet darkness of Indus Valley graves, a peculiar gleam catches the archaeologist's trowel. The smooth, polished curve of a black stone bangle resting beside skeletal remains as if keeping watch over the afterlife. These enigmatic ornaments, crafted from materials like slate, shale, or even rare chlorite, appear with haunting consistency across burial sites from Harappa to Kalibangan. Their uniformity is striking, always black, always stone, and almost always found encircling the wrists of the dead. But why this singular obsession with dark bracelets in a civilization otherwise celebrated for its vibrant beadwork and colorful pottery? The answer may lie at the intersection of geology, spirituality, and a funerary tradition that whispers across millennia. The labor invested in these bangles suggests they were far more than casual trinkets. Unlike clay or shell ornaments, shaping hard stone into perfect circles required extraordinary skill, days of grinding, polishing, and drilling with primitive tools. At sites like Farmona, where workshops for bangle production were unearthed, archaeologists found half-finished pieces abandoned mid-creation, their fractures revealing the precision required. This wasn't mass-produced jewelry. Each bangle was a small triumph of craftsmanship, yet the consistency in color and form implies strict cultural rules. In a civilization that avoided overt displays of wealth in burials, these dark bracelets emerge as one of the few deliberate grave goods, hinting at a symbolic language we've yet to decipher. Three compelling theories compete to explain their significance. The first leans on their material, black stone's rarity in the alluvial Indus plains. Sourcing these rocks meant arduous journeys to distant hills or trade networks stretching into what's now Afghanistan. Their very scarcity may have marked wearers as elites, their wrists circled by the weight of prestige. But this clashes with findings at Rakhigarhi, where black bangles appeared in graves of both adults and children, suggesting inheritance rather than earned status. The spiritual interpretation offers a darker allure. Across ancient cultures, black stones were believed to absorb malevolent forces. Mesopotamians buried lapis lazuli with their dead to guide souls, while later Hindu traditions associate black with protection against evil. Perhaps these bangles were funerary armor, a stone shield for the journey beyond. The color itself holds clues. Unlike the Indus people's fondness for red in daily life seen in their pottery and beads, black dominates only in death, a deliberate chromatic boundary between worlds. Most haunting is the ritual theory. At Lothal, archaeologists noted bangles deliberately broken before burial, their fragments placed in precise arrangements around the body. This mirrors Vedic customs where shattered pottery signifies the irreversible passage to the afterlife. The circular shape adds another layer, an unbroken loop representing eternity, or a physical tether preventing the soul from wandering. Yet contradictions linger. Some graves contain dozens of bangles stacked up the arms, while others hold just one. Were these personal belongings buried with the deceased, or standardized offerings from mourners? And why do a few settlements like Dholavira lack them entirely? The silence of these silent stone hoops grows louder with each new excavation, each discovery deepening the mystery rather than solving it. What emerges is a portrait of a civilization that reserved its most solemn symbols for the threshold between life and death. In their meticulous placement and unvarying darkness, the black bangles become more than artifacts. They're a cipher for how the Indus people faced the ultimate unknown, encoding beliefs about status, safety, and the soul's journey in stones that outlasted both their makers and their meaning. Among the rigid grids and right angles of Indus Valley cities, the rare circular platforms at sites like Kalibangan stand out like mathematical anomalies, perfect rings of baked brick embedded in the geometric order, their purpose as elusive as the civilization that built them. These structures, some measuring over 15 feet in diameter, defy the urban planning norms of their time. While most ancient cultures reserved circular designs for sacred spaces, think of Stonehenge or Mesopotamian ziggurats, the Indus people used curves sparingly, making these platforms all the more perplexing. Were they altars crackling with sacred flames, ancient observatories tracking celestial movements, or something far more pragmatic, like industrial workstations for processing raw materials? Each theory peels back another layer of this architectural riddle. The fire altar hypothesis ignites the imagination. At Kalibangan, excavators found one such platform blackened with layers of ash, its center scarred by intense heat. The arrangement echoes later Vedic fire rituals where concentric circles represented cosmic order and flames bridged earthly and divine realms. Nearby, terracotta cakes, some bearing bull motifs, were discovered, possibly used as sacrificial offerings. The parallel is tantalizing. Could these platforms be precursors to Hindu yajna altars, where fire ceremonies still unfold today? Yet critics counter that a single ashy stain isn't conclusive. Indus cities show no other overt signs of fire worship, and the platform's distribution is erratic. Some sites have none at all. Astronomy offers another compelling lens. The platform's precise curvature aligns with celestial patterns observed in other ancient cultures. At Dholavira, a circular structure's sightlines frame the winter solstice sunrise, suggesting a function similar to Neolithic stone circles. The Indus people's obsession with water management proves they tracked seasonal cycles. Might they have also mapped the stars? The absence of carvings or inscriptions leaves this theory floating in the realm of speculation, but the mathematical precision of the circles hints at a sophistication that could encompass celestial observation. Then there's the industrial angle. Some platforms feature drainage channels and raised edges, practical for tasks like dyeing textiles or smelting metals. Lothal's circular structures, found near bead-making workshops, contain traces of mineral residue. Imagine artisans huddled around these rings, polishing carnelian beads or mixing pigments, their tools leaving microscopic scars on the brick. This interpretation grounds the mystery in the tactile world. No gods or stars, just the sweat and skill of daily labor. the truth may lie in a blend of all three. Ancient peoples rarely compartmentalized the sacred and practical as we do. A platform could host solstice rituals at dawn, metalworking by noon, and communal gatherings at dusk. The bricks themselves whisper of adaptability, their uniform size allowing quick repurposing as needs shifted. What endures is the enigma of choice. In a civilization that worshipped order, these circles were deliberate exceptions, their curves a conscious break from the straight lines that ruled every other aspect of life. Whether reaching for the heavens or rooted in the soil, they remind us that some mysteries resist the square corners of easy explanation. The artisans of the Indus Valley mastered copper and bronze with a precision that still astonishes metallurgists today. Razor-sharp chisels, perfectly balanced axes, and delicate needles so fine they could stitch the thinnest fabrics. Their workshops buzzed with innovation, alloying tin from distant Afghanistan to create superior bronze, inventing intricate casting techniques, and even pioneering early forms of metal recycling. Yet for all their skill, one glaring absence stands out in the archaeological record. Not a single iron tool has ever been found in their cities, not even as the civilization neared its decline. This technological blind spot baffles experts, especially considering their flourishing trade with Mesopotamia, where iron daggers were already being forged. Why would a culture so adept at extracting the best from copper and bronze ignore the metal that would redefine the ancient world? The mystery deepens when you examine their metallurgical achievements. At Mohenjo-Daro, copper artifacts show astonishing purity, with some implements containing over 99% refined metal, a feat requiring furnace temperatures exceeding 1000 degrees Celsius. They weren't just smelting, they were perfecting, creating alloys with exacting ratios of tin and arsenic to enhance hardness. Bronze fishhooks from Lothal still gleam with corrosion-resistant brilliance, while a set of copper mirrors discovered in Harappa reflect faces with startling clarity after 4 millennia. This wasn't accidental craftsmanship, it was a scientific tradition built over generations. Iron, by contrast, demanded even higher temperatures and more complex smelting techniques. While the Indus Valley's neighbors in the Caucasus and Anatolia began experimenting with iron as early as 2000 BC, the Harappans seemingly dismissed it. One prevailing theory suggests their environment held the answer. The Indus floodplains lacked accessible iron ore deposits, while copper and tin were readily available through trade. Why gamble on an untested metal when existing materials met their needs? Yet this pragmatic view stumbles when confronted with their trade networks. Caravans from Iran and Mesopotamia, regions already adopting iron, passed through Indus cities regularly. Did conservatism outweigh curiosity, or was there a deeper cultural resistance? A provocative alternative theory emerges from their social structure. Unlike the warrior elites of Mesopotamia or Egypt, who prized iron's military advantages, the Indus people show little evidence of large-scale warfare. Their bronze tools were optimized for carpentry, agriculture, and craftsmanship, not battle axes or swords. Without the driving force of arms races, the urgency to adopt iron may have been muted. Their metallurgical priorities leaned toward beauty and utility, intricate jewelry, standardized weights, and durable farming implements, but the starkest clue might lie in what they didn't leave behind. While other civilizations heralded iron's arrival with fanfare, Hittite texts boasted of sky metal, and Egyptian pharaohs were buried with iron daggers deemed more precious than gold. The Indus Valley silence is deafening. No workshops with iron slag, no trial pieces, not even failed experiments. It's as if they consciously rejected the metal altogether. Some scholars speculate that iron, often associated with weapons and conquest in neighboring cultures, clashed with their ethos of harmony and trade. Yet nature may have had the final say. As the civilization declined, their once thriving trade networks fractured, cutting off access to tin for bronze production. Had they embraced iron earlier, they might have weathered the crisis. Instead, their metallurgical mastery became a cul-de-sac, a brilliant but brittle tradition that couldn't adapt when the world changed around them. The lost knowledge of their forges whispers a cautionary tale. Even the most advanced societies can falter when innovation stalls. Among the carvings on Indus seals and the bones unearthed from their ruins, one animal is conspicuously absent: the horse. While Mesopotamian chariots clattered across clay tablets and Egyptian pharaohs raced steeds in funeral processions, the Indus Valley's artistic and skeletal record remains stubbornly horseless. This isn't just a curiosity, it's a gaping hole in our understanding of their mobility, trade, and even their eventual decline. Did these master urban planners truly lack horses, or have we simply failed to find the evidence? The debate divides archaeologists like a battle line drawn across the Indus plains. On one side stand the proponents of the no-horse theory, pointing to the silent testimony of bones. Excavations at major sites like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro yielded remains of cattle, water buffalo, and even elephants, but no definitive horse skeletons dating to the civilization's peak. The artistic record echoes this absence. Seals teem with bulls, rhinoceroses, and tigers, yet not a single engraving clearly depicts a horse. Even the spoked wheel, synonymous with horse-drawn chariots elsewhere, is missing from Indus imagery. This void is especially striking given the horse's centrality in later Vedic texts, where it symbolizes power and ritual sacrifice. If horses were present, why wouldn't this visually sophisticated civilization immortalize them? But the plot thickens with a handful of disputed finds. At Surkottada, a late-period Indus site, archaeologist Sandor Berkone identified what he believed were horse bones, citing telltale dental and skeletal features. Similarly, fragments from Lothal and Kalibangan sparked claims of equid remains, though critics argue these could belong to wild asses or onagers native to the region. The dating complicates matters further. Most contested specimens come from layers corresponding to the civilization's twilight, leaving open the possibility that horses arrived only as the culture fractured, perhaps brought by the very migrants some blame for its collapse. The debate spills into linguistics. The Indus script remains undeciphered, but later Sanskrit texts from the Vedic period composed after the civilization's fall are replete with horse references. The word Ashva, horse, gallops through hymns, while rituals like the Ashvamed, her horse sacrifice, underscore its cultural weight. Proponents of the horse later theory argue this disconnect suggests equines were introduced by migrating Indo-Aryans, who may have overpowered or assimilated the horse-deficient Harappans. Yet opponents counter that linguistic gaps don't equate to biological absence. The Harappans might have known horses by another name, or reserved them for elite circles, leaving fewer traces. Technology adds another wrinkle. Without horses, how did the Indus people manage long-distance trade networks spanning thousands of miles? Their goods reached Mesopotamia, but bullock carts depicted on a few seals are sluggish for such vast journeys. Could they have used boats and riverine routes exclusively, or is the missing horse evidence a red herring, obscured by burial practices or climate? The Indus's reluctance to depict warfare also plays a role. While neighboring cultures celebrated chariots in battle scenes, the Harappans' peaceful leanings might have made horses less symbolically relevant, even if they possessed them. The implications ripple beyond zoology. If horses were absent, the Indus Valley's isolation from a key technological advancement, the chariot, might explain their vulnerability to outside pressures. Conversely, if evidence has merely eluded us, we're left to wonder why such a vigilant record-keeping society omitted a creature so central elsewhere. Perhaps the answer lies in the soil. Acidic Indus floodplains decay bone faster than arid Mesopotamia, erasing proof. Or maybe, in their trademark defiance of ancient norms, the Harappans simply didn't care for horses, finding dignity in the steady gait of the bull and the silent flow of their rivers. Until a sealed stable or a definitive engraving emerges, the question remains bridleless, galloping just beyond our grasp. Walking through the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro today, it's hard not to feel an eerie sense of déjà vu. The grid-patterned streets, the standardized brickwork, the intricate drainage systems, they all seem to whisper ideas far ahead of their time. Yet for all their sophistication, the urban brilliance of the Indus Valley lay buried not just under layers of soil, but under centuries of historical amnesia. How could a blueprint so advanced, one that rivaled modern city planning, fade so completely from cultural memory, only to be rediscovered by accident in the 1920s? The answer reveals a paradox. While their physical cities crumbled, subtle echoes of their innovations may have survived in ways we're only beginning to recognize. Consider the sheer modernity of their urban vision. While ancient Rome's haphazard alleyways and medieval Europe's winding lanes prioritized organic growth, the Indus Valley's planners imposed mathematical order. Streets aligned to cardinal directions with near-astronomical precision, creating neighborhoods that maximized airflow and sunlight. Their drainage systems covered channels with inspection manholes wouldn't be matched until the 19th century. Even their zoning showed foresight. Industrial areas downwind of residences, public wells evenly spaced for equitable access. These weren't accidents, they were policies etched in brick and mortar, reflecting a social contract where collective welfare trumped individual extravagance. Yet after their decline, these ideas seemingly vanished. Later South Asian cities like Pataliputra or Taxila abandoned the grid for radial designs centered on royal palaces. The Great Bath's hydraulic genius found no successor in the stepped tanks of the Gupta Empire. Even sanitation regressed. Medieval Delhi's open gutters would have horrified Mohenjo-Daro's engineers. This raises a haunting question. Did their urban model collapse because it was too advanced for its era, requiring a level of civic cooperation that couldn't survive the pressures of climate change and migration? But look closer and traces emerge, not in stone but in culture. The Indus Valley's emphasis on communal water management may have sublimated into Hinduism's sacred geography, where stepwells like Rajasthan's Chand Baori became both engineering marvels and spiritual sites. Their standardized weights resurfaced in the Mauryan Empire's trade regulations, hinting at institutional memory passed through merchant guilds. Even the egalitarian layout of later Buddhist monastic centers mirrors the Indus city's aversion to ostentatious elites. The greatest legacy, however, might be psychological. The Indus people's rejection of monumental temples and palaces suggests a worldview where human dignity wasn't measured by proximity to power, a radical notion that flickers in South Asia's folk traditions and village democracies. Their unseen influence lingers like a faded watermark on history, waiting for us to tilt the page just right. Perhaps their true lesson isn't in how cities should be built, but in how civilizations can choose to forget and rediscover their own best ideas. From the silent script etched into seals to the haunting absence of monumental temples, the Indus Valley Civilization leaves us with 30 unsolved riddles, each a testament to a society that refused to conform to the ancient world's expectations. Their cities were blueprints of efficiency, yet their leaders remain nameless. Their trade networks spanned continents, yet their language dissolves into meaningless symbols under our gaze. They engineered water systems with the precision of modern hydrologists, but abandoned their streets without leaving a confession in clay or stone. Every answer we uncover only deepens the intrigue. How could a civilization so advanced vanish without passing down its stories? Why did they reject the trappings of kingship and war that defined their contemporaries? And what secrets still lie buried beneath the silt of the Gagahakra, waiting for the right trowel or satellite image to reveal them? These mysteries aren't just academic puzzles, they're mirrors reflecting our own assumptions about power, progress, and what makes a civilization great. The Indus people challenge us to reconsider the very definitions of equality, governance, and resilience. Their grid pattern streets whisper of a society that valued order over opulence. Their unmarked graves suggest a culture where status wasn't flaunted in death. Even their artistic choices, small, intimate figurines over colossal statues, speak to a world where meaning wasn't measured in scale. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Which of these 30 enigmas lingers in your mind? Is it the eerie uniformity of their brickwork spanning cities hundreds of miles apart? The haunting black stone bangles clasping the wrists of the dead? Or perhaps the unicorn motif stamped 1,000 times yet never explained? Maybe you have a theory. Could their script encode a lost language, or is it something else entirely? Did they fall to climate change, or was their decline a slow unraveling of social ties? The comment section is your excavation site. Share your thoughts, debate the possibilities, or suggest which mystery we should explore next. The Indus Valley Civilization may have left no epic poems or royal chronicles, but their silence is its own kind of message. In a world obsessed with monuments and conquests, they built something subtler, a legacy not of towering statues but of quiet brilliance. As the debate continues and new discoveries emerge, one thing becomes clear: some secrets aren't meant to be solved quickly. They're invitations to keep looking, questioning, and marveling at how much we still don't know about these master planners of the ancient world. So stay curious, keep digging both in the earth and in the imagination, because history's greatest puzzles are the ones that refuse to stay buried.